And we are still following that breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ with the Atlanta Hawks. That is the team that has won the NBA draft lottery for the first time in franchise history. The Hawks, by the way, entered the day with just a 3% chance of getting the top pick. And our guy Gary Parrish putting together his first mock since the NBA draft lottery had wrapped up. And it's another Frenchman going #1 overall, Alex Sarr. You see him there, the 7'1" center from France. And really, Sarr's been on big boards in mock drafts, really inside of the top 3 leading up to today, leading up to this point. Taking a look at the lottery results, of course, we have the Hawks, #1 overall. The last time they picked #1 overall was for David Thompson. That was back in 1975. This go around, they jumped 9 spots to get to that #1 spot. The Wizards are picking 2nd, followed by the Rockets at 3, the Spurs at 4, and then the Pistons, who were tied for the best odds at 14%. They're not picking #1. They are going to be picking 5th. And let's welcome in our basketball analyst, Gary Parrish, for his post-NBA draft lottery mock. And Gary, we've talked about the strength of this upcoming class, and there's a lot of debate at the top. And there is a sense out there that the Hawks, of course, could seriously consider 4 or 5, 3 candidates to take with that pick. But you have Alex Sarr going in that #1 spot in your latest mock. Tell us why.
Simply put, I think he's the best prospect available in this draft. He's not Victor Wembanyama, the person who was selected #1 overall last year. He's not the caliber of prospect of Cooper Flagg, who is going to play this upcoming season at Duke and probably be the #1 pick in next year's NBA draft. But he's still a 7'1" center who's an extremely gifted athlete, can rim protect, block shots, alter shots, and also guard in space and just move around. Think of Jaren Jackson Jr. That's what Alex Sarr projects to be someday. Now, Jaren Jackson has already established himself as an NBA All-Star and a reliable three-point shooter. Alex Sarr needs to improve the shot. The statistics aren't there with it, but when you watch him, it looks okay. He seems comfortable taking it, and that's why most NBA evaluators are confident that Alex Sarr in time can be a real stretch 5 at the NBA level, and that's why if the Atlanta Hawks do keep this pick, I would assume they would use it on Alex Sarr. Of course, in Atlanta, they are sort of in win-now mode with Trae Young, so obviously packaging the #1 pick to try to bring back a veteran is something that should and probably will be considered as well. But if Atlanta makes the first pick, I think it will be, and think it should be, Alex Sarr.
All right, and you see the unlikeliest NBA draft lottery winners. The Magic, of course, taking the cake back in 1993. That eventually turned into them getting Penny Hardaway. But the Hawks, only a 3% chance to get that #1 overall pick going into today. Let's talk about the Wizards. They have the #2 overall pick. And in your mock, you have them taking the 23-24 SEC Freshman of the Year, Reed Sheppard. And it's remarkable when you think about it, GP, because this is someone who was ranked within the top 80 when you talk about the players coming out of the class of 2023, and he was creeping up top 10, top 5, and you have him going 2nd overall in this mock.
Yeah, he wouldn't have gone 2nd in last year's draft. He might not have gone 2nd in next year's draft. But in a draft that is universally regarded as weaker than most, you can afford to take a flyer on a guy like Reed Sheppard this high in this draft. I acknowledge up front I got him higher than most, but I just love not everything about him. Like, I love everything about LeBron James and Kevin Durant. Reed Sheppard's not that. But he can dribble, he can pass, he can shoot. He was above 50% from the field at Kentucky. He was above 50% from 3 at Kentucky. He's a better than most people realize athlete as well. He's got all the good genes, mom and dad, both excellent college basketball players. So at Kentucky, he had those moments where you looked at him and you were like, why is this guy not in everybody's top 5? Because, you know, he's a little undersized for a 2 guard, but I think he's going to play combo at the NBA level, at which point he's got, you know, good enough size. He can jump better than maybe most realize. So he's a real athlete playing that position. Simply put, I'm not comparing him to Steph Curry. I never would. But one of the things I remember about Steph Curry through the draft process is people focus so much on what they thought he couldn't do as opposed to all of the things he could clearly do that we were watching right in front of us with our own eyes. If you watch Kentucky this season, you saw a young man who could dribble, pass, shoot off the bounce. He could shoot off of screens. points. He could shoot in transition, and those types of players are immensely valuable in the NBA right now. Somebody's going to take Reed Sheppard high in this draft. I think it should be Washington, and they'll be glad they did.
GP, when I was watching the lottery, one of the moments that stuck with me was watching Asur Thompson and his face when they announced that Detroit was going to get that 5th overall pick, and he was almost laughing. Very tough for Pistons fans because they're picking 5th overall despite having the worst record in the NBA 2 years in a row. In this latest mock, you have them taking Stephon Castle with that pick.
Yeah, listen, it's disappointing if you're Detroit. This is what the NBA has in mind, though. They want to discourage tanking, so they flattened out the lottery odds a little bit. So even when you have the best odds to win the lottery, you still don't have good odds to win the lottery. Nobody does. So this is the type of thing that can happen and has happened consistently in recent years. But it's not all bad because you're still in Detroit picking in the top 5. And in my mock draft, I've got Stephon Castle from UConn slipping to that place. The biggest attribute Stephon Castle brings is all of the stuff you saw at UConn in the sense that he didn't go there as a McDonald's All-American projected top 10 pick trying to score the most points, trying to play the most minutes, trying to take the most shots. He fit in and understood the importance of winning and basically looked at Dan Hurley and that UConn staff and said, tell me what you need me to do. Tell me how I can impact winning. So the assignment was you're going to guard the best player on the other team on the perimeter every game. You're going to take that assignment, you're going to take pride in that assignment, and you're going to shut those people down. And he did that more often than he did not. You know, if you needed him to go get a bucket, he could do that, but he didn't need to. He didn't get frustrated when the point total was low or the shot attempts were low. He just wanted to be a part of winning, to further establish a culture at UConn and really be a part of it. So if you're the Pistons, I mean, who needs somebody who's a winner more than that franchise right now? So is he going to be the face of that franchise someday? Maybe, maybe not. But if I'm Detroit and I just went through what I went through, setting all sorts of bad records in the NBA, I love the idea that I'm going to get a combo guard with size who can really guard his position on the defensive end, fit in on offense, and more than anything else, just wants to be a part of winning. You need people like that in franchises like Detroit. They might have a chance to add one when we get to this 2024 NBA draft.
Yeah, we know that Danny Hurley's squad knows how to win, so we're going to talk about another Husky here, Donovan Clingan, and you have him going to the Trailblazers with one of their 2 lottery picks, GP.
Yeah, at some point in every draft, it almost doesn't matter, particularly in the top 10, you know, what your team need is. You just focus on best player available, best prospect available. And at this point in the draft, I do think, based off of my current mock, that Donovan Clingan would be that guy. I know they have DeAndre Ayton in Portland, but I'm not certain he's a long-term answer there. Donovan Clingan really helped himself in this 2024 NCAA tournament. He showed that he could be terrific in drop coverage. He can obviously catch lobs at the rim and score around the paint. He's not a, stretch option at this point. You're not going to see him out at the three-point line taking those shots, but he's going to be able to stretch it out a little bit, improve as an offensive player, but the defensive stuff is why he will go in the top 10 of this draft. And again, if you're Portland, still very much in a rebuild in the post-Damian Lillard era, you're just taking best prospect available. Clingan can be a part of winning and also shore up the middle of your lineup for many years to come.
Let's look just outside of the top 10 in your latest mock, and we're talking about Isaiah Collier out of USC. You have him going number 11 overall to Chicago. Tell us why you potentially like that fit.
Well, Jaclyn, as you know, he was the #1 player in the class of 2023 in the entire country and went to USC with a lot of hype and was in many ways overshadowed by his less heralded but more famous teammate, Bronny James. And he didn't have, Isaiah Collier, a great year at USC. USC didn't have a great year this season. But I think NBA evaluators, at least most of the ones I talk to, they're going to not completely disregard it because there are problematic things here, but they're going to focus on what they saw over multiple years at the grassroots level while Isaiah Collier was in high school, and remember and try to focus on what exactly was it about this guy that made him the #1 prospect in America when he was coming out of high school, and how much has actually changed. Because he was a 6'5" point guard who can really get downhill, get to the rim. You see him finishing there, who is strong for his position and super super explosive for his position. The problem, of course, is that he's a non-shooter at this point, below 35% from three. And point guards that are non-shooters, I'm not saying you can't spend lottery picks on them, because somebody does every single year, but you'd certainly rather be able to shoot from that position than not. Although that is the one position in the backcourt where you can kind of get away with it. In Memphis, for instance, Ja Morant is not an elite-level shooter, but he can still be an all-NBA guy because he can do so many other things well. Isaiah Collier can also do a lot of other things well, and if you were a believer in him as the best high school player in America less than a year ago, then getting him just outside of the top 10, if you're Chicago, you got to be thrilled about that.
Gary Parrish joining us here on HQ, breaking down his first mock since the NBA draft lottery. Thank you so much, GP. We appreciate it. And speaking of USC and Isaiah Collier, of course, we are taking a look at the odds to select Bronny James. We talked about Bronny James maybe overshadowing Isaiah Collier at USC. Vegas likes the Lakers. They have the best odds to do it at plus 185, potentially keeping LeBron there, in LA as well, followed by the Knicks, the Heat, and the Cavs, the Sixers, and the Thunder. That squad there, all 14-1. And a reminder, the draft is on June 26th.